War is a strange time for any nation. While soldiers fight for freedom and future, life goes on. People go to work, go on dates, strive to grasp some semblance of normalcy. This was the world in Melbourne, Australia in 1942, when 30,000 American soldiers set up camp in Royal Park. Among them was Eddie Leonski, a serial killer who terrorized women at night, taking advantage of the city's brownouts. A strategy meant to protect Australian citizens, left them vulnerable to one man's madness. Welcome to History, Mystery, and the Unexplained, the show where we look at everything from true crime to cryptids, the paranormal, and beyond. Today, we are going to look at the Brownout Strangler, a man who says he took women's lives because he wanted their voices. Before we get started, please like, subscribe, follow, or whatever on the platform of your choice, and be sure to leave us a review. I'd love to hear what you think. Leonski was born in Kenville, New Jersey, the sixth child of Russian immigrants. His life was not an easy one. Both of his parents were heavy drinkers, and his father, John, believed heavily in corporal punishment. He would take out his wrath on his children, especially when he drank. His mother, Amelia, was overprotective and controlling, to the point that he was bullied and called Mama's boy by all the neighborhood kids. Amelia did get a divorce at one point, only to bring home another abusive man. By the time he joined the military, two brothers had prison records. One was in a mental institution. And by some accounts, joining the military was an effort to escape a love triangle. He fell in love with his brother's wife and fled because he could not have her. His military career started and should have ended in San Antonio, Texas. Like his parents, he liked to drink. In his book, Murder at Dusk, author Ian Shaw said Leonski's two focuses were getting drunk and showing off. He would do handstands and walk across the bar, a testament to his upper body strength. He was a bodybuilder and a boxer before the military, after all. Not a good enough one to make it a living off of it. He was a bag boy for a grocery store by trade. Shaw continued that statement, and assaulting and eventually murdering women. Before he even left Texas, he assaulted a woman and tried to strangle her. The military did nothing. Slap on the wrist and sent him on his way. I guess able-bodied young men who were able to fight were more important than women's safety. Gee, I'm glad times have changed. Once in Australia, things only got worse. Although American assistance was welcomed by Australia during World War II, a vast number of Americans were pouring into the country, and it was overwhelming. A tent village sprung up in Royal Park called Camp Pell. Royal Park is an 180 hectare or 450 acre urban park just north of Melbourne in a suburb of Parkville. Camps like this sprung up all over Australia. It is part of the Eddie Leonski story. It's important to have at least a cursory understanding of the dynamics of the area at the time. You had thousands of American soldiers passing through Camp Pell for training before they were redeployed elsewhere. This was like pouring a great big vat of American testosterone and machismo all over the city. They were inundated with 18 to 30-year-old men a long way from home, sleeping two to a tent. American soldiers were paid more. American soldiers were allowed to drink at the Australian bars, but it didn't go both ways. At the American PX's, a sort of military department store, they offered alcohol, cigarettes, ice cream, chocolate, and much more. Things that were banned or heavily rationed for Australia. Australian servicemen were not allowed at the American PX. Conversely, Australian hotels could only serve drinks twice a day, 1 hour at a time. But they could choose what time. So Australian servicemen wanting to get their drink on would rush from hotel to hotel like some sort of college bar crawl in extreme mode. American GIs enjoyed the nightlife right alongside their Australian counterparts. Yes, they can get alcohol at the PX, but women were at the hotels. The general belief was that American GIs were oversexed, overpaid, and overeaten. This infighting among the Allies eventually blew up into what was essentially a 2-day-long bar brawl in Brisbane. Add to this cocktail the impending doom of war. Japanese airstrikes had already occurred in Darwin, Broome, and North Queensland. As a precaution, many streetlights were to be turned off, or the voltage was turned down, dimming the lights. Homes and businesses alike would board up their windows so light wouldn't shine out into the street. Ivy Mcloud was newly separated from her husband and reinventing herself at the age of 40. On May 2nd, she went out for a few drinks, enjoyed some needed time with her friends, and just escaped all the craziness that was going on in the world. They celebrated into the morning. As the sun was coming up, she made her way to the tram station at Albany Park. A friend offered to walk with her, but the streets were bustling with soldiers. She felt safe. As she was waiting, she saw a young American soldier walking in her direction. She couldn't help but smile. He made a comment about her bag and walked over to feel it. "It's soft," he said. Between the smell of liquor on his breath and the way he was looking at her, she instinctively stepped back into the doorway of a nearby building. In seconds, he was on top of her, choking her. She tried to fight back, but it was no use. Eddie Leonski quickly overpowered her, taking her life. He tore at her clothes, stripping her nearly naked. In a later interview with the court, he recalled that he struggled with her belt. He said it made him mad, and he became fixated on it. He didn't have enough money to get back to camp, so he took a few dollars from her purse and then threw the bag onto her body. Before he left, he took the time to pose her in a degrading position. A passerby, Harold Gibson, saw the American soldier staring down at the ground in the doorway of 191 Victoria Avenue. When he made his way towards him, the soldier took off. That's when Gibson found the body of Ivy Mcloud. Police were left with too many questions. As the bag was still there, they knew it wasn't a theft. And although she was mostly naked, she was not sexually assaulted. Her death made very little sense. When Leonski returned to Camp Pell, his tent mate Gallo recalled that he was babbling. "Did you ever hear of a werewolf? Did you ever hear of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? I'm like him, 2 personalities." He then passed out in the tent and just slept off the previous day's drinking. The next few days were fairly normal for him. Leonski woke up, served breakfast to his fellow soldiers, and by 10:30 a.m., he was on his way to being drunk. On May 9th, Gallo recalled Leonski was staggering around the camp. He was talking softly in a high-pitched voice sounding like a girl. Gallo said that this was something he did from time to time when he drank. He went into his tent and changed it to his fatigues, putting on his khaki suit. "Where are you going?" Gallo asked. out," Leonski replied. "You should lay down. You're drunk." At that, Leonski just started crying. "I killed Gallo. I killed." His tears mixed with the rain. He was lost in himself. The two took a tram to Citadel and had sandwiches and tea at a cafe on Flinders Street. At Leonski's request, Gallo flipped through a newspaper looking for any information regarding this second murder. The night prior, once again, he had gone out drinking. At a bar, he met 31-year-old Pauline Thompson. Thompson was a singer who had come to Melbourne to entertain the troops. The two had drinks. She was drinking gin squashes and him whiskey. They talked all night. She leaned forward and sang into his ear, giving him his own private show. "You have a beautiful voice," he told her. It reminded him of his mother and how she would sing to him at night. "You have a baby face," she told him, "but I bet you're wicked." The two left together. When she went to go kiss him goodnight, he started choking her. He said that he did it because he wanted her to keep singing, and even though he knew that she would stop singing when her hands wrapped around her throat, it was the only thing he could do to take her voice. Gallo found an article and gave the paper to Leonski to read. It took him a bit. As they made their way from the cafeteria to a nearby milk bar, Leonski confessed everything to his friend. He told him that there was no one else he could trust. He kept thinking about the fact that he had borrowed another soldier's hat, and he was grateful that he didn't drop it, or else that soldier might be arrested. Gallo urged him to turn himself in, but he didn't. He was afraid of what would happen to him. At this point, headlines on every major paper were talking about the Brownout strangler. It was known that it was an American soldier. Between the witness who saw Leonski leaving the scene of the first murder and the many witnesses who saw Thompson chatting with a man with an American accent, the problem was there were thousands of American soldiers, and only two people knew which one had committed the crimes. Gallo threatened to turn Leonski in, but he said he'd just deny everything. There was no proof, after all. On May 18th, Gladys Hosking left her job in the chemistry library of Melbourne University, where she met Eddie Leonski on the street. He had been drinking in excess that night. According to Time magazine, he had about 7 whiskeys and 30 beers. He said again that it was raining, and he asked to go home with her. They walked to a dark part of Lighthouse Street, and she went to part ways. Not wanting her to go, he strangled her and then carried her body up a hillside where he fell in the mud. He recalled that she was still groaning and making gurgling sounds, so he smothered her with her own dress. When he finished, out of breath and covered in mud, he asked the woman for directions. She was later able to pick him out of a lineup, as were several other women who had survived other attacks by Leonski. He was quickly arrested and charged with all 3 murders. Given that he was an American on foreign soil, he was given a court-martial rather than being prosecuted by Australian authorities. He confessed to everything. Most of the details here come from his own words. 2 army physicians and an Australian psychiatrist found him fit for trial and not insane. He was sentenced to be hanged, which was carried out on November 9th after he completed his last meal of steak, eggs, toast, and coffee. Upon his conviction, he was happy. Why was I ever created to create misery and suffering on this earth? He asked his guard. Death is a wonderful thing. They say I have been given a severe sentence, but I do not think so. I think I got off lucky with death. Now, I'm not a psychiatrist, but in my opinion, Leonski was insane. Dr. Frederick Ortham, a New York criminal psychiatrist, diagnosed him as having committed symbolic matricide. He wanted to kill his mother and found substitutes where he could, since she was so far away. That being said, institutionalizing him rather than putting him to death would be throwing a match on the powder keg of the American-Australian tensions. As it was, Australia was outraged that he was even buried on their soil. His body was moved 8 times before it finally was relocated to Hawaii. That's it for today, folks. Till next time, I'm Christopher Gretowitz. Thanks for listening.